Hi, and welcome back to Making Space to Make. This is week 11, and today we're talking about something that can completely change how your sewing feels, and that's workflow. Over the past few weeks, we have organized our projects and figured out what's worth tracking, but today isn't actually about organization at all. It's about flow. How to arrange your space so your work moves smoothly from cutting to sewing to pressing without unnecessary steps. I'm going to share the concept of the sewing work triangle, which is inspired by kitchen design, and show you how I've arranged my space so everything I need is exactly where I need it. This is all about making sewing easier once you actually sit down to work. And just a quick note, my space is small, so I can't get the lights in here, so I apologize if this is a little awkward. If you've ever looked into kitchen design, you probably know about the work triangle. That's the arrangement of your sink, stove, and refrigerator to create an efficient workflow. The same concept can apply to sewing. Your three main workstations here are cutting, sewing, and pressing. How these are arranged in relation to each other can make the difference between sewing that flows and sewing that feels like a really frustrating workout. Like everything else in this series, a good workflow is not about having a perfect looking space. It's about reducing friction. When you have to walk across the room for every tool, when your thread is in a different area from your machine, and when your pressing means setting up a whole production, that friction really does add up. The goal is to make the work itself easier so you can focus on the sewing instead of managing your space. Let me show you how my space works. I have my sewing machine and my serger next to each other on this long table. Directly behind me at the machine over here is my ironing board, and then to my left is my cutting table. It creates a tight triangle. It's approximately 48 by 26 by 36 inches. I use a rolling chair that's easy to position and move away from the machines, which makes transitions between the stations really smooth. My tools are stored exactly where I use them, between my sewing machine and my serger, and they're supporting the center of this table. I have drawers with machine tools, cutting tools, needles, pins. Anything I need while sewing is just a quick grab away. To the right of my ironing board, because I'm right-handed, is another set of drawers with all my pressing tools, iron cleaner, interfacing, and stabilizer. I keep my tailor's boards and clapper on top, along with a few pattern weights. Things I use less frequently or only use when I'm standing at my cutting table, like pattern punches, additional weights, tracing tools, I keep those in a wider drawer set on the other side of my cutting table. In addition to these larger things, I also have smaller details that help me work more efficiently. I have these little silicone trays in front of my machines, and this one has thread snips, tweezers, and a seam ripper. These are things I reach for constantly, so they never leave that spot. I also have a small matching circular silicone tray next to my machine. I also keep one on my ironing board and my cutting table, and I use these for pins. When the pins come out of my garment, they go right into the tray, and then I just rotate them around my triangle as I sew, so I always have pins handy. I have a charging station for my phone and AirPods behind my machine that will also charge my portable speaker, because I like to listen to things while I sew, but when I really need to get things done, I do put myself in Do Not Disturb mode, so only the most important notifications can get through. Your phone can be a helpful companion or a constant interruption, so plan for which one you want. I also have beagle interruptions quite a bit, so I made a bed that goes underneath my cutting table that they like to sleep on. Doesn't always work, as you can see, but it works often enough. For thread, I have it mounted behind my serger, so it's an easy grab away. The key is making sure you buy enough thread when you're purchasing your project supplies so you're not running out mid-seam. This applies to other notions as well. Having to stop and hunt for supplies breaks your flow. Everything I use regularly is within reach of where I use it. I don't have one central tool storage area that requires me to get up and walk somewhere. Machine tools stay by the machine, cutting tools stay by the cutting area, and pressing tools stay by the pressing area. Obviously, not everyone can have a dedicated sewing room with a perfect triangle, but you can still take this concept into consideration as much as possible. Even people who set up and take down for every sewing session can use this advice. Try to set everything up so you don't have to wander around too far, and you'll be able to get more done before you have to pack up again. If you're sewing in a dining room or other shared space, think about your workflow when you're setting up. Can you arrange your temporary stations so you're not constantly crossing the room? Is there a better way to organize your tools so you aren't wandering around your stations looking for them? Here's how I want you to evaluate your current setup. Pay attention to how much you're moving around during a typical sewing session. If you don't need to leave the room for a task, but you're still wandering around constantly, you probably could improve your configuration. The question isn't, is this organized? The question is, does this make my sewing easier? Sometimes it's not about rearranging everything. Maybe it's just moving your thread closer to your machine, or keeping a small tray of essential tools within arm's reach, or maybe positioning your chair so you can easily roll between stations. This week, I want you to pay attention to your workflow. Where do you find yourself walking back and forth? What tools do you reach for most often? And where are they stored? Could any of that friction be reduced? Once you have that awareness, think about one small change that could reduce unnecessary movement. Maybe it's relocating one frequently used tool or adjusting where you position your chair. It could also be putting your beagle on your table for easy petting. Good workflow is not about having the biggest space or the most expensive setup. It's about understanding how you work and arranging your tools and stations to support that work. When your space flows well, sewing becomes easier and more enjoyable. You spend less time managing your space and more time actually creating. No kidding. That wraps up our workspace setup segment, and next week we're moving into a machine, tools, and notions deep dive, which builds perfectly on the foundation we've created here. So focus on the flow, and I'll see you next Friday.